the person I intend to become, thereby creating in my mind the clear message of Third, I love the principles of and desire that exists below my mind. Therefore, I will go offended and daily commanding myself to know that I will come. Fourth, I believe in God. I will never outside. I fully realize that no one has no function. Therefore, I will need no transaction, nothing at all. I will see by action myself before the execute and the cooperation of me. I will be for me, for my work to develop. I will maintain pretending justice of the city. I will not be lost all men. I will others to me, properly and in myself. I will not make me formula, memory, or any law of faith, to obey the passion of my heart. God will sacrifice the prayers. One step forward, the ball will be back on the heart. Guaranteed some progress on that man. That translates to one, I think they were actually two, I actually rely on myself. Three, I contact my spirit. Four, I Four, I learn to pause. I follow in person. Five, I follow along my walk Six, I set problems to find myself. Seven, I completely fall around my Eight, I don't want to use Nine, I follow myself to Ten, I shall sit fast in a marvelous 11, I will return every strike off my friend divine. 12, I will work the body of my life in all broken moments. Inside of my room with me, every orientation for my mouth. I will now accept my careful, I can get started every I am the voice! I am the voice! I will lead not follow! I will lead not follow! I will lead not doubt! I will lead not doubt! Create not destroy! I will create not destroy! I am a force for good! I am a force for good! I am a leader! I am a leader! Divide the odds! Divide the odds! Step up! Step up! Step up! Step up! Step up! I'm a professional salesperson who gets on phone. I do the minutes on my own. I have another right. I told her I'm calling the other day. The other day, I really think I get stronger than the staff. I never have a situation. My confidence is able to live in there. I always have enough time. I get extra care in my life. I started daily something. I got sorry. I think you're right with me. I know what all I get. I exactly what there's a problem. I gotta keep it going. I have to help the problem. I am up. I have my money left in my confidence again. If you actually keep one, I need a starting good. I enjoy the best. I exercise daily. I enjoy helping my clients succeed. I email daily. I have real estate expert. I have last expertise at real estate expert. I am a professional. I am financially independent. I have conditions to teach my clients. I have solutions. Prospect is in my business. And I was hiring to sell my own. Prospect is easy for one. I enjoy farming. The more I try to find success, I use it on. I admit to farming to the farming. I have things up. I know how to play. I know how to succeed. I mean,
Morning, guys.
Morning.
How's it going?
Great.
Great. Good. Is anyone else grateful for car speakers that aren't blown out? Yeah. Okay, let's hear it. Gratitudes, wins, victories. I'm directing a lot of my attention today to this side of the room, I guess. Yeah, Jeff.
I'm grateful for role play and finally kicking my butt.
That was good.
Yeah.
Great. It was awesome.
Seriously, I needed that. I didn't want to come in today. I'm tired. I don't feel well, but I need to be coming here and get woken up and get my butt handed to me. That's what I'm going to do.
Running
Good.
I'm always here.
You
It's a voluntary time.
This guy.
can tell he's here when he rips you. So.
Yeah, it comes from the right place and you acted, right? Like, where would you be right now if you never had shown up, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Nice.
Anyone else? Who else? Yeah.
Yeah, this month has just been really refining. It's amazing what happens when you just show up and you put the metal down, you know, and you really just get on it. And it's been fascinating, the refinement of my thoughts, you know, as I've kind of gone back to doing what I need to be doing. The victory, I would say, is multiples under contract. You know, like I just put 3 buyers under contract.
Wow.
Several listings under contracts. Took 3 listings in the last couple weeks. You know, and I still don't feel like I'm putting it down the way that I could or that I should. But the refinement is happening.
So the refining doesn't stop, is that what you're saying? You guys know how long Elman's been with the company, right? He just talked about production for himself. He's still refining himself, still putting himself in the right spot. So awesome. And he shows up. He's here all
Well,
the
the thing,
time.
he was here late last night too, still doing it.
Could we tell ourselves the story? I was here late last night, right, Keith? I don't need to come back. I was here. I deserve to stay home and not go in and everything. So I was going to share this quote later, but it falls in line with what you guys are saying. It's by Thomas Jefferson. Do you want to know who you are? Don't ask. Act. Action will delineate and define you. Thank you. Why can I not think of that word when I'm saying? Action will define you, not thoughts. Yeah.
I'm just grateful for Greg, Brendan, and Alma, who are original agents of Everest that have stuck to the course and who do show up. You know, I think that's one of the greatest things that I took away from Dave's situation is, you know, he was one agent that no matter who it was in the room, no matter who was speaking, no matter what was going on, he showed up and he was there and he supported it. And you can see that replicated throughout his whole life. And so I'm just grateful for the examples that they set for all of us and continue to come, even though they are producing.
Show up. That's how.
Yeah, I'm grateful for universal laws. So the 2 that I've really been focused on are obviously action, which was a perfect example of that, and then just positivity, creates positivity. So I always tell my agents 2 + 2 is still always 4, unless you're in some weird universal day that it's all 7 to 5, but tomorrow will still be full. And then just positivity breeds positivity. So for me, like, I wasn't always the most positive person, and I've come back to like being centered and positive, and like, that was a perfect example. I gave him a positive, and he gave me a tremendous amount of gratitude back.
Great.
Nice.
Thanks for sharing. That's great.
I
Anyone
get
else?
Doug afterwards too.
I'm easing my way up. I'm just
Isn't it great when you're in a place when people say thank you for a good butt kicking?
Yeah.
Like, what an environment. It's awesome.
Awesome.
Everyone's trying to get better. So we have a few different announcements here. We have gone over it quite a few times. Guys, just show up. We've been talking about action. If this is something outside of what you usually do, you're going to get results outside of what you usually have, right? Great activity, great results. Good activity, good results. No activity, no results. So put yourself in a place. Yeah,
I was just going to say, with these upcoming events, you know, George has always recommended that we attend at least one major event per quarter, at least. So make that a goal as you develop your business and as you put money aside and put time aside for events, that you utilize these opportunities.
Speaking of refinement, yeah, go, just go, just do it. Am I leaving anything else out? Toastmasters yesterday, we have Toastmasters. I guess we don't have that up there, but Wednesdays at 1. Very good meeting. Who here is in Toastmasters? Who went? Yeah, great meeting, right?
It's awesome.
Yeah,
Love it.
so
Kudos to Wanda. She
Oh,
did
wow.
a
Right?
fabulous job.
to see the way that people prepare when they're speaking is pretty fun, and to get to know people and where they've come from. I definitely see Wanda differently now.
You know,
I saw her on a high plateau before, on a high plane, but after hearing more about her and learning about her, puts things in perspective.
yeah, I just wanted to share what an amazing environment that we have here, because people are coming and sharing something so personal and trying to speak in a way where they can be critiqued even on their personal stories. And I was so touched with Wanda's story, because that was very personal, and she shared it with everyone, and that just really touched me yesterday. So
Yeah,
it was
It's
amazing.
inspiring.
Awesome.
Okay, so today, along the lines of our stories, yesterday I actually spoke and I talked about turning points and how we define those in our lives. And the cool thing is today I have more than 6 minutes, which is the allotted during Toastmasters to share in that speech. But I'd like to dive into that a little bit more today. How we define a turning point and when that may have occurred in our lives and how those turning points occur. And one thing I shared is it's just been fascinating to me, individuals that just stand out, that have brought about change not only in themselves but in others, and have made huge contributions to the world, to their spheres, to everything. Like, what is it in that individual that causes that? Is it upbringing? Is it, an experience they had? What is it? How does that occur with one person as opposed to another? Maybe even with the same upbringing, the same experiences. How does one person bring about change like they do, positive change or negative change, and the other person doesn't? One area that I'm also always fascinated with is in sports, seeing how individuals or teams rise up above, outside of themselves to accomplish amazing things. So example of that is, I remember, and I shared this last week, but I remember during the Super Bowl, someone was talking about Tom Brady, and he's older now. When I say older, like maybe a year or two away from me. So like when they say older, but yeah, he's older now, and they were comparing him to other quarterbacks out there with absolutely amazing talent. These other quarterbacks, there's one they were actually talking about specifically from Kansas City, and this guy, he's the first quarterback I've seen. He can throw a no-look pass right on the money without looking at his receiver. I've never seen that before. But they did say one thing interesting. They said he cannot compare to what's in between the ears of Tom Brady in his mindset. And that is why Tom Brady consistently, whether we like him or not, gets to the Super Bowl and wins. There's one example I want to share with you. I absolutely love. Is anyone else familiar here with 30 for 30 on Sports Center on ESPN? I love it because it dives into these awesome stories and how things came about, and maybe the background of an individual compared to others. So we have more of an idea of how they made this huge accomplishment. In one I saw recently, it was over Buster Douglas and Mike Tyson. And I have to ask this, who was born after, let's say, 1986 in here? This is going to be interesting. Okay. I knew it, Jeff. Yeah. So I want to make sure you're familiar with Mike Tyson. Can someone give me a background on this guy? I mean, what kind of boxer was this guy?
It's
Brawler.
Nice.
He was? Yeah.
Nice.
A freaking killer and a fighter. Yeah. Yeah. So, no, someone told me about this guy's career at the time. I mean, this guy was the most famous athlete in the world. Why is that? At his peak.
He'd come out in a fight in less than a minute. He'd knock his opponent out.
Yeah.
$60 pay-per-view, and it was done in 1 round.
Not even a full round.
This guy would just destroy people. And you saw people on their face when they're in the ring that after 30 seconds, I do not want to be here anymore. I don't care how much I'm being paid. I do not want to be fighting this dude right now, right?
Yeah, I mean, the boxers at the time would come out in fancy silk robe, and he'd come out nearly naked, black.
I don't remember that part.
He didn't wear that. He came out, I mean, he had those short black shorts on.
Yeah.
And no socks and black shoes.
Yeah. So this guy
I mean,
was
fierce.
the real deal. A lot of people called him, well, at the time, most everyone called him the best boxer of all time. And I know it's wrong in hindsight, but a lot of people said that. We're not going to get into that discussion right now, but a lot of people said that, whether right or wrong.
He finally
Okay.
got beat though.
Man, sports fans in here. Okay.
Most
So,
powerful.
and then we have on the other side Buster Douglas, James Buster Douglas. His dad was a big fighter in his day, not nearly as big as Mike Tyson and what he'd accomplished, but he was coming up through the ranks. And however, you have Mike Tyson, who's just chiseled and built and apparently comes out half clothed and everything to the ring. And we have here James Buster Douglas, who really had a hard time with weight. He had a hard time looking in shape. They called him, I think they called him the Pillsbury Doughboy or something like that when he was out fighting people. So, but still people gave him a chance and he was rising up. And I don't know the boxing world that well, but there's 3 different associations or federations in boxing. And he actually came up in one of the federations for the title bout. And people are paying attention to him and everything. He's doing well up until the 10th round and just kind of mopping the floor with this other guy. And everyone's like, yeah, he's going to win. Maybe he's going to go against Mike Tyson here soon and things like that. And so anyway, in the 10th round, something happened. And they actually, one of the worst labels you can have in sports, and especially in boxing, is a quitter. And for whatever reason, and I'm not going to go into the other, there was a lot of things going on in the background where his mind wasn't into it and everything, but the other guy won. And he the fight was stopped because he wasn't even throwing punches back. And a lot of people were going into, I won't go into it again, but his dad was, a force behind it and his mind not being right and things like that. But anyway, so people counted him out. They're like, yeah, he was coming along, didn't have a record like Mike Tyson at all, but, he basically quit in the fight. Mike Tyson, in the meantime, I mean, he has not lost. In fact, he's knocking guys out left and right. So Buster Douglas, he starts coming back up again, winning some fights and here and there. And it came to the point where Mike Tyson was preparing to fight Evander Holyfield, another great fighter. And he needed kind of the go-between fight. He needed someone to be the spacer in between fighting Evander Holyfield. So they were looking for someone that would be an easy win. Ergo, James Buster Douglas. And so he's training for it, and even people in his corner are kind of like, yeah, we'll see what happens. Mike Tyson, we've seen what he's done to other people. And, man, he is out of his league. There's no way he's going to be able to win this fight. Anyway, he's 3 weeks before the fight, and he finds out one day that his mother had a stroke he was extremely close to his entire life. Lived at home until way late, too late in his life. And so his mother had a stroke and passed away. And it just ripped his heart out. And for 3 days he was grieving, and he was one of his trainers came with him to meet with him and said, what do you want to do? Do you want to bow out? It's totally understandable if you do. And he responded in that minute, he said, my mom would not want me to bow out. My mom would want me to fight. And from then on, with only 3 weeks until his major bout in Tokyo for the World Championship, he started training like he never had before. And they said in his eyes, you could see in his eyes, he had this resolve that they hadn't seen before. It's almost that same killer look that a lot of boxers have. And everyone around him started believing, man, if he goes with his game plan, he is going to beat Mike Tyson. Everyone that knew him. And sure enough, the bout happens. Mike Tyson didn't beat beforehand. He says, I don't have a game plan. I don't know this chump. I don't have to prepare for this guy in any way. Don't even ask me questions about this guy. I'm focused on Evander Holyfield. We see where his mind is. Right at the beginning of the fight, Buster Douglas just starts throwing punches and landing punches. And you immediately see Mike Tyson saying, what is going on? This guy was supposed to be a lay-down fight, easy fight. Anyway, he's pulling Mike Tyson through it up until, I can't remember what round, I think it's the 8th or 9th round, I think it was the 8th round, Mike Tyson threw an uppercut and put Buster Douglas down. Everyone said, okay, here we go. You know, Mike Tyson's back, Buster Douglas, of course, but people were still impressed with him. He said he really showed up better than anyone else. Buster Douglas knew that Mike Tyson would come out at the 9th round just throwing punches, because whenever a guy's nearly on the ropes, they're going to come swinging. And Buster Douglas was prepared for it, fought back. Long story short, long story not as long, he came back and he won the fight. He started throwing a combination Mike Tyson wasn't ready for. Mike Tyson went down, and he didn't just go down, he was KO'd, which means he's knocked out. He could not stand up in the 10-second count. And everyone's just going crazy. And at the end of the fight, they're saying, what did they asked something, why did you win this fight? Not how, why, which is interesting, right? And he said, mother, mother, and the guy's tearing up. God bless her heart, my mom. That is a turning point for that individual, right? Everyone says he is not supposed to win this fight. That was not the same fighter. How is that not the same fighter? It's the same dude, right? How did this happen? So I have a question for you guys. Is it the event that creates that turning point in our lives? What do you think it is? I want to hear what you think. Yeah, Rick.
It's our why, without question. I mean, you look at George St. Pierre. I don't know how many of you follow UFC, but George St. Pierre was one of those fighters who absolutely got his butt whipped every day going to school. Scrawny guy. And this guy woke up one day and said, I will never, never be beat again. I will not stand for this. He went on to be one of the most destructive fighters in the UFC. But you ask him why, and he tells his story. He knows why. And that's with every one of us. We define our why. It defines our lives.
So we allow this experience to define us, right? It depends on, it is this and this only. It depends on how you respond to these circumstances and these experiences. It depends on you. That could easily break anyone else, but he decided how to respond in that moment. And with that emotion, was able to win. Yeah, Lindsay.
I was just going to say exactly what you're saying is it's the power of our decisions, right? So the power of our decisions that shape our destiny is what Tony will always say. But it's also the perception and the way you perceive what is happening to you. I was listening to a video from him this morning that he was talking about, I can't remember the guy's name, Sir something, and he grew up in the U.S. and now he's some king in another country, right? But he grew up in the U.S. completely dirt poor, could give every excuse of how crappy the economy was, how crappy this, and when he went through all these things, right, his life, his experiences, how he grew up, I think his mom was a single mom that barely could scrape by, all these types of things, right? And now he's, I think his net worth is the most out of anybody in the world. And it's because he chose to look at it from a different perspective, right? And I love the story that he'll always often use, is he'll use that story of the two twins, right, who grew up in a household where their dad's an alcoholic. And one grew up as this highly successful doctor, and then there's this other one that grew up as an alcoholic. And both of them had the same response. Well, what could you expect with the father I had? And it's just always, I think, the decision that shapes our destiny cannot even be more true. And the power is if we don't make those decisions, this conversation with Tony obviously struck a chord, but those powers, if we don't make those decisions, how we can end up in a crisis. And those crises are where we shape our destiny.
So why is it, thank you, Lindsay, for sharing that. Why is it that some decisions we make fall flat and some decisions we make are an absolute? Why do you guys think that?
It's the passion behind it. When something is so important to you that lights that fire that, oh, absolutely, there's no way I'm giving up on this. And you give it your all, and that's how you push through. It's like a breakthrough you have, like with his mom. If you give an example, like my mom is in a dire situation right now. How can I survive without her? I have to fight. This is what she would want. So he kind of defined his own why at that moment. Like, I'm going to fight and I'm going to succeed. And that just lights that fire and you just push through something that's so important to you.
Yeah.
I think his girlfriend had just broken up with him too. I remember the story of it.
Oh, really?
But look at the
I would at
words
least
he
wait till
stated.
the fight to break up with someone, right? Maybe he
Look
wins
at
that.
the words he stated though when he was asked. All he could say is mother. I mean, it was so defined and such a power behind him. That's all he could speak when he was asked. That's how defined it needs to become in our minds and our hearts and our will to move forward.
And it doesn't really matter what the circumstances are, right? I didn't tell you already, but they could not get people in Vegas to bet on Buster Douglas. They started at 30-1, and then they eventually went to 42-1. Do you know what that means? You put down $42,000, and if you're right, you only win $1,000. They even said that one person put down $160,000 only so that they could win $4,000 because they were that sure that Tyson would win.
Wow.
So I'm going to share a couple things with you here in wrapping up, and I want to do an exercise with you that's very important. It depends on what you do moving forward when you make that decision, right? First, I'm going to say this again. Circumstances do not dictate your turning point. What I mean by that is you can create the experiences to have a turning point in your own life. If you put yourself out there, the moment you leave here and go prospecting, if it's been difficult for you in the past and you've not picked up the phone and told yourself it's too big for you or it's too intimidating or whatever it is, you can create that experience, that turning point by picking up the phone and doing something different and seeing what you're capable of. We can have a turning point in today, every day, if we put ourselves out there and do something difficult, uncomfortable, painful, and see what we're capable of. But if we shrink from that, we see the outcome, right? We'll never see what we're capable of. We'll never beat the Tysons in our own life, right? If we don't decide. The other thing is, I want to share with you, there are what's called keystone habits. A lot of times when we think we have to change everything, there's 15 different things we say, this week I'm not going to do this, this, and this. And we're really setting ourselves up to, one, be confused by all the things we have to do, and we're not robotic. A keystone habit has a domino effect on multiple things going forward. An example of that might be if I'm not working out, and then I look deep and I ask why, and it's because I'm not getting up in the morning, because I'm too tired. And then ask, why is that? Because I'm not going to bed early enough or on time, or putting the phone down before I go to bed. That could be a keystone habit. If I go to bed on time, I wake up ready to work out. Does that make sense? There's a domino effect from that. I'm going to share this with you. The secret to breaking any bad habit is to love something greater than the habit. So, in closing, I'm going to, Rick, can you hand these out? Because we don't have time to go through all of these. I want you to take this with you. So I use music a lot. I don't know about you guys, and lyrics to help put myself in the right frame of mind when it comes to specific things. I want you to listen to the words of this song, and I want you to identify that one thing you're no longer willing to tolerate. That one thing that you are ready to just put in the past, burn it, gone, over with, and we're going to go through a couple questions here on how to replace that with what you should be doing. So let's.
Look at that.
Yeah, do we have enough?
It was exactly
It's
enough.
exactly.
It's meant to be.
Freaking me out.
Okay, so first question. We're going to answer this in real time. If you need to revisit it later, feel free to do so. Starting now, I promise to myself I will no longer allow the following key habit to hinder my progress. I have a feeling a lot of you guys already have an idea of what that means.
There's some things you can't
What key
forget.
habit are you no longer going to allow to hinder your
It's
progress?
sinking us like a stone.
Yeah.
I just
Because it's
wanna
hindering
bury
you, right?
it.
Yeah.
watches burn. Stand in the rain till the pages turn. Dance in the light of a lesson learned. Lesson learned. I wanna leave everything that hurt.
When I'm faced with this same temptation, whatever it might be, to go back in, fall back into these habits, I will plan for it by doing the following. So that's the second question. How will you plan for
that? Out into the unknown, we traded in our regret. Not gonna go alone.
I'm doing this for myself. This is important. For myself. Why? Why must this change?
I watch all my bridges burn. Stand in the rain till the pages turn. Dance in the light of a lesson learned. Lesson learned. I wanna leave everything that hurts. Never go back to the way we were. Set it on fire, baby. Watch it burn. Watch it burn.
Next question is
Set it free. And let the smoke
let's say you drop whatever it is that should not be.
I need to find somewhere
And that other person, I hear from you, that's maybe that's out boxes right now. It sits down and talks. Are you going to put words of encouragement? Are you maybe saying like this out loud? I'm continuing on to. What are they going to say?
I need to find somewhere I can't believe. I need to know there's a chance we can be. I watch all my bridges burn. Stand in the rain till the pages turn. Dance in the light of a lesson learned. Lesson learned.
Just for myself, you will benefit from this change. And how will you
Never go back to the way we were. Set it on fire, baby.
How will
Watch it burn. Watch it
Okay, and last question, and this is really cool. What circumstances or experiences have influenced me to make a change today? How have those experiences shaped me? And feel free to, the reason I typed this out, feel free to take it with you and look at it and add to it in your own time. One thing I want to remind you guys of is a lot of times we let the past carry through. A lot of times when we have those habits that are difficult to let go of, we're actually looking at the past. So here's what I want to remind you of. The past, one thing I've heard before that stuck with me, the past can either be a prison or a school. You can either learn from it or you can be stuck in it and never get out. I want to remind you that starting from this point forward, your future is spotless. The past has nothing to do with it. Do you understand what I'm saying? The future is spotless. You create it from this moment going forward. I want to, in closing, I'm going to leave this with you guys. If you want to take this, and I've put this in a visible place for myself, and this has helped remind me and put things in perspective. of creating my future and what it is that I want to live a life by design instead of a life by habit. I'd like to get a volunteer, someone just to read something quickly to wrap up. Someone with conviction, someone that can mic, someone that's going to amplify. So,
Keith
yeah.
is good at that.
Mike, come on up, dude. Okay. So I want you to read this out to everyone. Again, it's with conviction.
Okay.
And your name there, and just share with us that.
Okay. I, Mike, hereby commit to doing what it takes. Beginning today, I will create a new future by creating a new me. I can do nothing about my past. My future is immediate. I understand that to achieve momental results, it takes momental and consistent effort. When I am faced with the choice of doing nothing or doing something, I will always choose to act. I seize this moment. I choose now. I know mediocre results always follows mediocre activity. I also know that great success always follows great activity. Fear is no longer a factor for me, as I know it only exists in my mind if I allow it to exist, and nowhere else. I know the more I face my fears, the more I unlock new opportunities in my life. I do not feel failure, for in my life, failure is a myth, and fear does not serve me in the long term. Failure exists only for the person who quits. I do not quit. My success depends solely on my own beliefs, thoughts, and choices. When faced with challenges, I will not point fingers. I will find solutions. When I look for fault elsewhere, I give up control and fall to the mercy of my circumstances. I will accept responsibility. I take control of my destiny. I pledge to review this commitment daily and to make prospecting an overwhelming priority in my activities through planning. I will guard my time, for I know when I say yes to outside activities, I say no to the activities that will bring success. My thoughts, intentions, and daily actions will be dedicated to achieving my daily standards. I'm a person of action. I can make a decision. I can make it now. I'm done waiting. I seize this moment. I choose now. Woo!
So if you'd like to take a copy of this, I recommend putting your name, signing it, put it in a visible place. Remind yourself always why you are doing what you're doing, why you're changing what absolutely needs to be changed. And I know without a doubt, I have seen people, I've read accounts, all of you have of people that have done absolutely amazing things. And I know that you know you are more than capable of it. Okay? All right, guys. Okay. Woo!
I would like to acknowledge everyone that wore red today.
Happy Valentine's.
Got some red
What does that say about the guy that wore all gray for Valentine's?
You're out.
Gray heart.
Yeah, there you go.
Thanks for the lady for pointing that out.
Closing affirmations, I succeed because I act my goals. I am an optimist. I like talking to people. I know what is important to me. I remember people's names. I have a daily plan I follow. I am passionate about real estate. I know consistency is very cool. I like asking questions, but I am what it is for myself. My thoughts and my emotions back. So, I focus on my dream thing. I presentation talk on this way. I prove my skills with. I'm happy. I love the process and being my business. I see my future in the top. I love my life. I'm grateful and thankful. I control my thinking. I believe in me. I know what's next. I use my beliefs to optimism. I get things done. I'm my excellent concern. I think hard in. I connect with people. People love me. I love others. I'm disciplined and proud of my daily steps. I prospect daily. I know what to do. I'm a master persuader. I achieve my goals. I'm a real estate rock star. I'm passionate about my life. I live in the purpose. I'm confident in myself.
I know my destiny. I am not being strong. I am not. I am strong. I need help.
Didn't work.
You should do that at Summit or something.
I tried to.
Right.
You know, I was like,
Gotta go get it now.
I'm with Brett today.
No choice.
Yeah.